Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the programme tonight, the Home Minister Amit Shah responds in the Lok Sabha on the Manipur situation. He accuses Rahul Gandhi of indulging in drama in Manipur. He goes on to take on every one of the political barbs raised by the opposition. But while he does account for some of the reasons behind the immediate crisis, the question that will be asked is, are there any far-reaching solutions to the mess? So, we'll be bringing you the reactions of Amit Shah, what he said, what Rahul Gandhi said. We'll be analysing it as well, and then getting on to our debate on what the road ahead is, because that is a question to which there still doesn't appear to be one definitive answer. Next on the show, and that'll be at about 1:30, does the government in power have the right to amend any part of the constitution that it wishes? Is the ruling on maintaining the basic structure of the constitution sacrosanct? Now, we ask this because in the debate in Parliament on the Delhi Services Bill, a strong argument was raised by the former Chief Justice and now MP Ranjan Gogoi that the legal interpretation of the landmark Keshav Nanda Bharti case should still be open. The opposition worries that if the basic structure of the constitution is changed through an amendment in Parliament, we would potentially cease to be the democracy that we are. There are others, though, who say that constitutional amendments just cannot be restricted and should not be restricted in their scope. Let's just go through some of the key points that Amit Shah mentioned. What exactly has the centre done in terms of dealing with Manipur? He's spoken at great length about the steps the government has taken, but he's also responded point by point to many of the allegations made by the opposition.
So in what the opposition actually thought would leave the ruling party with fewer answers, Home Minister Amit Shah actually gave his longest speech of the parliament. This speech went beyond 2 hours. Of course, the most important highlight of his speech was that he did not politicize the whole rape incident in Manipur. He talked about how this is a gruesome incident that should not be wished upon any woman on this earth. He did not talk about sexual crimes in other parts of the country. So that was one important thing. Other than that, it's very important to note that Amit Shah came completely packed with data to answer all the queries that were being put to him in the last not just a few days but few months, because this was also the Home Minister, who's also one of the most important political campaigners for the BJP, setting the tone for 2024. So broadly, if you look at the speech, while Manipur was an important aspect of it, he also spoke politically. In fact, he listed out the most important achievements of the 9.5 years of the Narendra Modi governance. While speaking politically, he was very snarky about Rahul Gandhi's entry and sort of rise in politics. He said that in the last 13, he has heard about Rahul Gandhi being launched. He didn't use his name, of course, but it was very evident. He talked about one particular leader being launched over 13 times in the past. He spoke about this one woman called Kalavati that Rahul Gandhi, all of us know, had gone and spent the night with at her residence. She's a poor Dalit woman, and Rahul Gandhi was sort of reaching out to a lot of poor people back then. So Amit Shah spoke about that. He also gave political answers to his opponents, including Gaurav Gogoi and Supriya Sule, because in the last one day, as part of the no confidence debate, both of these leaders had basically raised a lot of questions. Mr. Gogoi had pointed out, had asked very pointed questions about Manipur, on the stealing of arms, on the condition of women in Manipur, and also police in action. And Supriya Sule had talked about BJP sort of being instrumental in governments, governments falling in certain states, and BJP doing internal politics and sort of poaching leaders and all that. And Amit Shah was very quick to talk about her own father and NCP Supremo Sharad Pawar doing the same in his peak years. To Gaurav Gogoi also, he spoke about how during the Congress and the UPA rule, Manipur had actually seen worst crimes, and during that time it was was only MOS Home, Rajesh Pilot, who basically had visited the state, and there was nobody else, not even the Prime Minister, not even the Home Minister, who would actually take care of these things. There used to be bands, hartals, and there used to be strikes throughout, and there would never be a discussion on Manipur during the UPA time. But now he said that Narendra Modi's form of governance has actually brought the Northeast as one of the highlights of governance. He spoke about 3 turbulent areas and the government action in each one of them, including Kashmir, the Naxalite region, and of course the Northeast. On Manipur problem, he was very clear that this is some sort of an exceptional situation, because he explained the whole context to it, because he said that this the violence was also triggered because of this Manipur High Court judgment, basically giving the ST status to the Meitei community, and how that was also done in some ways, not taking the ST Commission or the state government or the centre into confidence. So there are these things that he pointed out. What actually stood out was the confidence that Mr. Shah spoke with, and it was very clear that he made it a point to repeat again and again that post-independence, it's Narendra Modi, probably one of the most popular leaders that the country has seen. He called him the most popular leader that the country has seen since post-independence, and he also talked about several governance schemes, including welfare schemes for farmers, and also governance during COVID, which he said was exceptional, and which probably also helped the country manage COVID so well and not really have that many cases as we have seen in Western countries. With respect to Manipur, of course, he maintained a non-aggressive tone, and he also made an appeal to both the Meitei and the Kuki communities to come forward and sort of like spell peace in the state. Towards the end of the speech, of course, he asked both the opposition and the ruling parties to come together and appeal for peace in the state, but of course the opposition did not agree to it. Now, what Amit Shah said today also sets the tone for what probably Mr. Modi is likely to speak tomorrow. The PM is likely to speak tomorrow evening, and that again is going to be an interesting debate.
All right, Vasudha outlining some of the key points mentioned there by Amit Shah. Well, joining us now, Parajita Sarangi, Lok Sabha MP of the BJP, Jasmine Shah of the Aam Aadmi Party, BL Vora, former Director General of Police of Manipur, General Gigi Dwivedi, who was a General Officer commanding in the Northeast, and Chitra Ayanthen, she's an independent journalist from Manipur. Thank you all very much for being with us. Jasmine Shah, did you finally get some of the responses which the opposition had sought on what the government was doing in Manipur?
Vishnu, I think today what Mr. Amit Shah has done is given a master class in how to speak for hours and hours without conveying very little. And I say this with a lot of sadness, because today in the 2 hours that he spent speaking on the floor, he never answered some of the top questions that the opposition has been asking him. And the questions are that why did it take a viral video after 78 days of an incident that has happened for the government of India to speak up about the mayhem that the Manipur women are going through? Why has the central government still not fired or taken resignation of Chief Minister Biren Singh after he has completely failed? And this is not our word. The Supreme Court has said that the entire constitutional machinery has broken down. He himself is going around making statements that hundreds of women may have been faced atrocities. So these are some big questions. The other question is, even after it took a viral video for the Prime Minister of India, whom the Home Minister said he has visited the Northeast 50 times. But he could visit Northeast 50 times in happy days, the day when the people of Manipur are looking up for some leadership and somebody from Government of India and their Prime Minister to come and make sure that there is an appeal for peace. Prime Minister is not seen. So this is why,
all right. So 3 separate
like
points, Jasmine, that you've raised. The absence of the Prime Minister, why the Chief Minister hasn't been replaced, and why did it take so much time for action to take place after this viral video, or only once this viral video took place? Parajita Sarangi, would you like to respond to those 3 points, ma'am?
Certainly I would. See, today after listening to Honorable Home Minister of the country, Shri Amit Shah ji, I don't think there should be doubt or any question in anybody's mind. The only condition is that the person should be listening to him intently. See, here was a Home Minister who talked with facts and figures. He had tremendous content in his speech and he was extremely convincing. his speech had clear-cut 4 parts, and we must acknowledge that. Number one, he talked about all the developmental efforts which Prime Minister Modi's government had made in the past 9 years, and wonderfully he compared these with the 9 years prior to that. And number two, he talked about the J&K issue very candidly, the kind of efforts that have gone into and the kind of restoration of normalcy efforts that are in place. And number three, very interestingly, he also mentioned the left-wing extremism issues, and he said that only 3 districts are there in Chhattisgarh which are affected now. The entire country is safe and sound as far as LWE is concerned. And fourth and very important was the efforts in the northeast, especially Manipur. You know, he spent considerable time on what his government has done for Manipur, has been doing for Manipur.
I understand those points.
And this entire ethnic strife.
But you have not answered the questions which Jasmine Shah was asking. Jasmine raised 3 questions. Would you like me to repeat those questions? Number one, why did it take for a viral video to come out before action was taken? Secondly, why hasn't the Chief Minister been replaced in Manipur? And thirdly, he asked questions on why the Prime Minister has not spoken on this issue. Can you reply to these 3 specific questions?
Yes, of course. Of course. See, that is why I said anybody who would have listened intently would have had no question or doubt in his or her mind. See, the point is that this particular video came out just 1 day prior to the Parliament session commencement. So, in fact, Amit Shah ji was very candid when he said that there was some sinister design, and if it would have come out on 4th May, if the person who had actually suppressed it would have given to the police, those 9 persons who have been arrested would have been arrested immediately thereafter. So, I think this particular thing has been clearly mentioned by the Home Minister. Number two, see, as far as Prime Minister is concerned, he has gone to the northeast 50 times, and all kinds of efforts have been made by the government, and that is why 152 people killed in Manipur so far. And if you see month-wise, the number of killings is descending. That means restoration of normalcy efforts are actually delivering fruits.
Okay, I think that response, that is a response to several of the points. I'll come back to you in a little while, Jasmine, but first let me go across to Chitra. Chitra, in terms of what the government has done, what the Home Minister says is that teams of doctors were sent to relief camps. Almost 15,000 people were arrested from Manipur. He was in the state for 3 days, the Minister of State for 23 days, again to show that they care. A buffer zone was created, 36,000 professional personnel, etc., etc., etc. So, in as much as it's clear that there is so much tension in Manipur, in as much as it's clear that it's been catastrophic in terms of the violence, are we necessarily being fair when we say that the centre has not done enough? Frankly speaking, is there a lot more that the centre could have done when it comes to law and order?
Oh yes, too little, too late, and just stopgap measures. That's what I would say. Because last time I was here on your show, I raised this point that where in the history of independent India has sectarian violence been allowed to happen for more than a week? You know, it has never been allowed to happen. And today the Home Minister has gone on the floor of the Parliament to say that, yes, there are external forces at work. So if there are external forces at work, what is the Indian military forces doing? There are some 60,000, more than 60,000 personnel out there. There are videos emerging of the Indian Army actually have, carrying militants of one particular community. The Home Minister himself was in a meeting with leaders of the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, which are spearheading the agitations, and it's an umbrella body of the Kuki civil societies. So if you are saying that the whole issue in Manipur is by external forces, then what's the point of having all these talks with internal, serious? there are many issues out here. If you talk about, say, the fact that arrests have been met, yes, arrests have been met. But when we talk about buffer zone is very important. I don't think any such thing has happened in India at all. We're talking about a situation like it happens in Palestine, where Gaza is divided into this turf and that turf. How is it possible in a democracy like India that there are going to be security forces, one from the state and one from the center, which is going to look into the interests of one particular community and vice versa?
Chitra, I understand what you're saying, and I understand the issues you raise about the difficulty in raising a buffer zone. A buffer zone is essentially an area which is patrolled by security forces to ensure that clashes between different sides don't happen. That is what it is in the context of Manipur. The other point I just briefly like to make, Chitra, just another key point, in as much as you say that there was a video of the army telling people to go or escorting people into a particular direction of one community, there are also videos of the Assam Rifles where local people are praising them, saying Assam Rifles do not leave, Assam Rifles do not leave. So it's a complicated situation. You've seen those videos as well. So I think it's important not to target the security forces while accepting, Chitra, while accepting that there are issues, there are problems between the police and the armed forces. There's no doubting that.
Well, I think it's a very dangerous precedent that if there is a joint military command that's being taken at the state, and if it isn't, there has to be, because the security forces, and I don't think it sets a good precedent for India, where the state forces are saying something else and the central forces are saying
it's disastrous and it is dangerous. I'll try and get General Dwivedi on this, and then Mr. Vora as well. General Dwivedi, the Assam Rifles is a true paramilitary force, obviously officered by the Indian Army, and then you've got the Manipur police, which has been accused of being entirely partisan, and the two sides come to each other. FIRs are lodged by the police against the paramilitary force, the Assam Rifles, which is essentially army. We don't say that, but that's essentially what it is. How would you interpret, or how would you look into this situation?
Well, Vishnu, I am someone who commanded the division in Manipur during the most trying times when half the Manipur were under militants. Now, to very specifically answer your question, you see, the security forces work on a particular mandate. Mandate is given by the civil authorities, and they are defined a very clear role. Now, one of the panelists said there are 60,000 security forces personnel. Look, the armed forces function in different perspective. One is under counterinsurgency role, other is under militancy, anti-militancy, and the third is aid to civil authorities. Today, the same division which I commanded is in Manipur as in aid to civil authorities. Means your role is very limited. You only respond when civil authorities ask you to respond. Secondly, the Assam Rifle is basically central armed police force, but it operates under the operational control of the army.
Yes.
Its rank and file are locals. Its 80% cadres are from the army, 20% are local cadres. So therefore, it has its own limitation, because the rank and file would certainly have certain partisan or certain loyalties which could be questioned. But my issue is that the current situation is very, very complex, and I would recommend three simple actions. First and foremost, we need to have a civil dispensation which is effective and which has credibility, which has the trust. Secondly, the Unified Command headquarters must be effective. It must very clearly define what is the role of the army. Is it to disarm the armed, locals, villagers, or is it to only maintain the buffer zone? But that is not going to actually help out until you disarm. Secondly, what is the role of Assam Rifle and what is the role of police? Because in this case, what you have brought out, these are tactical actions, and there could be some aberration at the tactical level. But what I want to bring out is, at the strategic level, there has to be very clear mandate for the security forces.
Let me take that to Mr. Vora, and I think those are important points, General, that you raised. Mr. Vora, the distrust of the Manipur police in certain parts of the state, the fact that they're not working well with the Assam Rifles. We've had many reports over the last several months. how would you address this very specific problem?
See, firstly, of course, talking of Manipur per se, the police has been in shambles. There's a clear division between officers of Metis and cookies. You may be knowing, for 7 years there was only cookie DGP there. Normally they should put somebody from outside as the DGP, but in all states, locals are posted. So this is a problem. Now changing the DGP alone will not help. They have to change people down the line. And those who have been found guilty of partisanship, they should be punished and they should be shunted out of the state. And people from outside should be sent there. I think this is one. Second, Assam rifles, see, it's all a lack of coordination. What's happening is in this particular case where the FIR has been registered, 3 Metis had been killed in a particular place. The police were going after the cookies who had ran in a particular direction. There was an Assam rifles checkpost. They did not let the police go in that direction. Now this is wrong. This is bad, because under the law, the police, it is a duty to arrest people, register a case.
Yes.
Now Assam rifles handled it badly. The local guys handled it badly. They should have taken the clearance of their seniors if need be. These such incidents do happen, but in such a case, things are blowing up. I tell you, a major difference today is, Vishnu, as compared to earlier days, is there's a lot of social media today. India did not know Manipur 20 years ago, honestly, when I was first posted there. You will be surprised, when I was first posted in Tripura in 70s, my order said, report to Chief Secretary Assam Agartala. Now with social
That's
media,
ridiculous.
not only India, even the world knows. Even your media here, print and electronic, was not covering. So I think things have come under a big lens. Now, I think 3 steps have to be taken. Dialogue, of course, as the Home Minister said. I think strict action against poppy cultivation and the migrant cookies from there. That was one of the main causes of this trouble, as you know very well. And changing the administrative structure down below, because China is looming large on the scene.
No, I understand, and we'll. It is, and let's move. I just want to, because I'm running short on time, go back to Chitra. Chitra, in your mind, what are some of the steps forward that need to be taken? We've discussed the security angle, but in terms of local communities coming together, talking, we've heard about Metis and cookies coming together, or supposedly coming together on the table in Delhi in shortly to hammer out some sort of a peace arrangement. How do you see a peace arrangement? Do you see one at all?
I would agree absolutely what Mr. Bohra has said, and he comes from years of extensive, experience in different states of Northeast India. I am in Delhi as well. I was part of one Chatham, it was bound by Chatham House rules, but we were trying to have a dialogue between different groups. And that was in the first week itself, in May. So, but I would say that there is a lot of raw nerves, and my only thing is that if the violence keeps dragging on, it will be more and more difficult for people to calm down.
But Chitra, my question to you is specific, my friend. My question to you is specific. What, in your mind, as somebody observing the situation, other than the security things which we've discussed, is the way forward? What needs to be done, in your opinion?
Okay, I think the central leadership has to come on very strongly and say to both communities that, look, we all need to sit and talk, because each community is appealing to the central government to say, to take our side, to take
so
my
point
side.
one, there needs to be talks between the communities. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think the center should come clean on what it wants to do, and not play politics at all. Not just play politics over it. It's gone on too long. Okay, no politics by the center. And anything else? Anything else that comes to mind in terms of a solution, a long-lasting peace? I think you just need to create an enabling environment for dialogue. An enabling environment for dialogue. General Dwivedi, you see, the worry over here, and I really don't want to sound cynical, is that the extent of the differences which exist between the two communities, which have been fueled obviously to a certain extent by a particular court order,
are so intense. The fact that you've got the Meitei community in one part of Manipur, the Kuki community in another part of Manipur. These are two communities who do not live together at all. There are huge differences which go beyond everything we've discussed. How does anybody resolve those?
Well, Vishnu, first and foremost, it has to be taken as a national call, because we are not actually addressing this as a nation, and it is a national calamity. So everyone has to put the shoulder to the wheel to get Manipur back on the track. Secondly, Vishnu, until we disarm, because there are 4,000-5,000 arms, and people are armed. Until those arms are taken out, there will be always violence, because people with the arms resort to violence. And thirdly, army has high credibility. I think the army must be given greater role to disarm and also to bring the communities together. I can vouch for it because I keep very close touch even now with Manipur. Army has very high credibility, and army can actually bring a lot of situation on the ground. And my final thing is, there has to be a process. We have to have a roadmap. Currently, we are just reacting from one situation to another. We don't have a roadmap. And had the action been taken place timely, I am sure this catastrophic situation would not have arisen. So therefore, time is very critical. We cannot postpone hard actions anymore. Vishnu.
All right, I'm out of time on this program. Jasmine, sorry, we'll come back and discuss this at a later stage. But again, our focus, at NDTV, certainly on this show, is to look primarily beyond the politics. It's primarily to look for solutions. And I dare say, a long-lasting solution which brings peace between the two communities which are ethnically divided. Nobody seems to have, that one great idea at any level. Lots of security suggestions, dealing with poppy cultivation, fencing off a part of the boundary, but ensuring that there are no differences between the police and paramilitary. But how do you resolve an ethnic crisis once it has gotten to this stage? I'd like to thank you all very much for doing this. We're going to take a short break. Up after that, does the government in power have the right to amend any part of the constitution that it wishes? Is the ruling on maintaining the basic structure of the constitution sacrosanct? We have some wonderful lawyers. That's up next. Welcome back to Left, Right and Centre. Does the government in power have the right to amend any part of the constitution that it wishes? Is the ruling on maintaining the basic structure of the constitution sacrosanct? We ask this because in the debate in Parliament on the Delhi Services Bill, an argument, a strong one, was raised by the former Chief Justice and now MP Ranjan Gogoi that the legal interpretation of the landmark Keshav Nanda Bharti case should still be open. The opposition worries that if the basic structure of the constitution is changed through an amendment in Parliament, we could potentially cease to be the democracy that we are. So that's their concern. There are others who say that constitutional amendments just cannot be restricted in their scope. So that's what we are looking at. Joining us now to debate this, first up, we are joined by Professor Faizan Mustafa, who is a constitutional expert. Later on, we'll be joined by Sanjay Hegde and Deshrata Nigam. Professor Faizan Mustafa, I thought since a lot of people would not necessarily know of the case that we are talking about over here, that we should actually have some basic questions. So let me ask you this. Is there an inherent limitation in Parliament's power to amend any part of the Constitution?
You see, this whole question of basic features of the Constitution was first raised by Justice Mudolkar and Justice Hidayatullah in 1964 judgment of Sajjan Singh. So it is before Keshavananda Bharati in 1973. They expressed the doubt. For instance, they said that people who take oath by becoming member of the Parliament, that they would uphold this Constitution and law, can they destroy this Constitution?
Okay.
And the question put by the judges was very clear, that we are a sovereign democratic republic. Does that give power to the Parliament to change the democratic character of the Constitution? And they also quoted a 1963 judgment of Pakistan Supreme Court,
Yes.
Chief Justice Cornelius, who has similarly said that there are inherent limitations.
And where the
in
words
Constitution.
basic structure was first used, which is bizarre. It was actually a Pakistani judgment.
That is not 73, it is 1964.
Yes. But it was the 73 judgment which used the words in Keshavananda Bharti of
but
basic structure.
I'm talking of even prior to that.
Sure.
Even prior to that, Supreme Court had expressed the doubts that Parliament has unlimited power to destroy the Constitution.
Okay, next question.
That was the position of then Congress government. Just 1 minute.
Go ahead.
Now, in Keshavananda Bharati, of course, the bench was divided 7-6. It can be debated. One can also say that the whole judicial review idea is anti-democratic. Once there is a law passed by the Parliament, how can unelected judges nullify that law?
Sure.
But look, even the constitutional justification within the Constitution,
Yes.
within Article 368, which talks of amending power of the Parliament,
Yes.
it says once an amendment has been passed, the President shall sign it. So President does not have the power to reject a constitutional amendment. He has this reconsideration power. He has to straight away sign it. And then it uses very crucial words in Article 368, Clause 2, that thereafter the Constitution shall stand amended.
Okay.
Now, this expression that the Constitution shall stand amended, Supreme Court said in Keshavananda Bharati, means that there must remain some part of the Constitution which will stand amended. And that is the part to which the court called the basic structure of the Constitution.
Second question, did the Constituent Assembly make a distinction between essential and non-essential features of the Constitution? In other words, the basic structure, some would argue, is a part of the Constitution which has been deemed to be essential and cannot be violated. However, my question is, that is what the Keshavanand Bharti judgment, which was a 7-6 verdict, arrived at. If you go back, what did the Constituent Assembly say? Did they make a distinction between essential and non-essential?
No. It did not make very clearly, but then Constituent Assembly did not talk of collegium either. It did not talk of right to privacy either. Now the doctrine is that there are silences of the Constitution which are as important as what the Constitution expressly declares. But if you look at this expression that the thereafter the Constitution shall stand amended is not a silence. It's a very clear expression that the entire Constitution cannot be destroyed. There must remain at all points of time some part of the original Constitution which will stand amended. This expression gives legitimacy to the whole doctrine of basic structure.
Next question. Did the Constituent Assembly expect quote-unquote basic structure to be deduced from the preamble?
Not necessarily, but even in this case, Sajjan Singh, which I am saying that is prior to Keshavanand Bharati, where Supreme Court is raising a question, that they are not pronouncing anything, they are raising a question that it would be surprising if Parliament can destroy the Constitution, if people who take oath to uphold the Constitution can say that we are replacing this Constitution with another Constitution. There they very clearly say in one of the paragraphs that probably the preamble incorporates the basic features. They use word basic features.
Okay. To those who say that the Parliament should be challenged in all facets through an amendment, should that be required, that the Constitution can be challenged through an amendment in Parliament and any facet of it, they ask, does basic structure uphold the supremacy of the judiciary more than that of the Constitution? And they say so by arguing that there are so many judgments which keep saying that basic structure, this is something which works for the judiciary, it doesn't work for the Constitution. There's an ethical issue here.
There is some substance in this argument. You see, we have one Article 13 in the Constitution which says that no law shall be passed which contravenes fundamental rights. The expression judicial review has not been used in the Constitution. But Chief Justice Patanjali Shastri has said that Article 13 is there in the Constitution out of abundant caution.
Yes.
Even if it is not there, And if there is a law which contravenes constitution, somebody has to strike it down. And it cannot be parliament. It cannot be the executive which commands majority in the parliament. So the only organ left to look that parliament has not turned majoritarian would be an independent judiciary.
Was basic structure violated when socialist, the words socialist and secular, were added to the preamble?
Not really. If you look that there have been petitions which have gone to the Supreme Court saying that word secular and socialist be deleted. And the position which Supreme Court has taken that since preamble has been held to be the basic structure, we can add something to basic structure, but we cannot delete anything from the basic structure. Moreover, this word socialist to which you are specifically making a reference, if you look at the preamble, if you look at Article 39B and C, which very clearly say that there shall not be a concentration of wealth and that the national resources should be so distributed to subserve the common good. So there are already express provisions in the constitutions which are tilting in favor of socialism. So what was already expressed in the constitution, but word was not used, that word was used by the 42nd Amendment in 1976.
Fantastic conversation, Professor Mustafa. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
I've spent the last 3 days reading the judgment and a lot of the dissenting judgments as well. It's absolutely fascinating. Desh Ratan Nigam and Sanjay Hegde joins us. Desh Ratan Nigam, should Keshavananda Bharti be re-argued?
Well, in fact, if you look at the ratio, it is 7:6.
Yes.
Very narrow.
Yes.
And 6 people didn't want. So it's high time that we start, revisiting that. And it's a very debatable. Somebody who's read Mr. Adhyar Junia's book, which Mr. Ranjan Gogoi also specifically mentioned in Raj Sabha, would give a lot of insight into this subject. Now, let me tell you how the Supreme Court is encroaching upon legislative functions. Collegium, we know, was not there in the Constitution. The absolute power was with the president, and they brought this concept of collegium where the original concept was the president will appoint after consultation with Chief Justice of India. This is how they have taken over the executive functions of the president, which the Constitution did not allow. Now, second, the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner. It is no responsibility under the Constitution of the Supreme Court Chief Justice to be a part of the appointing process. That's in executive. They could at best, set aside the appointment and ask government to make a fresh appointment. They cannot become a part of the executive decision. They have blurred the line, the differentiation that was made between legislative, judiciary and executive functions. Similarly, of the CBI director, CJI has now encroached upon the executive functions. So these are the very, very important thing, which is why Arun Jaitley called it tyranny of the unelected. The concept of constitutional morality, please let me tell you, is a very dangerous concept. If you look at the entire jurisprudence, Indian jurisprudence from ancient history, from Mahabharata, even Ved and Puran, it is based on spirituality. In fact, the spirituality was discussed in the Constituent Assembly, and they said spirituality is infused in the Constitution. Morality varies from person to person. It's a Christian, concept which has been brought in, and therefore I certainly do not agree with the concept of a constitutional morality. Instead, it should be constitutional spirituality, where they have said, if a judge deliberately, does injustice or is, is corrupt, that judge needs to be destroyed. This is our scriptures say about it. And therefore, judges are not above the law or the Constitution. You cannot get into the domain of legislature or the executive functions. You cannot encroach upon that. And therefore, parliamentary autonomy and democracy cannot be diluted under any circumstances. Say, for example, tomorrow, the people of this country, and the people of this country are actually the star, not the North Star. Please remember that. We, the people of this country, they are the star of the Constitution. If tomorrow they think, instead of a prime minister system, let us have a presidential system of governance, because people think so. Can you stop that? Can you stop the people of this country having a new constitution? Because the old constitution maybe tomorrow may not be working. Maybe it is working today very fine. So you can't freeze the will of the people. People are supreme in a parliamentary democracy. And therefore, I think we have to be very, very careful encroaching upon the legislative or executive domain, which the Supreme Court is doing.
Okay.
It is trying to govern the country through judicial pronouncements. No, it cannot be allowed.
Sanjay Hegde, do you believe, on the other hand, that the basic structure must be protected to ensure that democracy, which has thrived in our country and which allows discussions like this, which allows dissent, which allows freedom of speech, which allows so many freedoms, remains protected?
A constitution has to be something much more than the mere will of a temporary parliament. A parliament can be for 5 years. A constitution is designed to endure for the life of the republic. Now, if by an ordinary parliamentary procedure, you use the power of amendment to totally abrogate the basic features of the constitution. Tomorrow, supposing you were to say, let me amend the constitution, and instead of the prime minister, we shall have a monarch and we shall make it hereditary. You have changed. You have used your power of amendment. But if the doctrine of basic structure does not exist, there is no curb at all on any parliamentary majority of the day.
Mr. Hegde, how would you respond to those who say that the constitution isn't static, it is almost a living entity? And if you look at it as a living entity which reflects people in our country, then it should also reflect changing circumstances. And those changing circumstances might, for example, reflect the views of those who are in power, who may want to change aspects or all aspects of the constitution. How would you reply to that? I think that summarizes what Deshratan was saying. Yeah.
The reply is rather simple. While the constitution is a living entity and can mold itself to the circumstances of the time, a constitution has a structure, a constitution has a skeleton. We set out to create a nation built on equality, liberty, and fraternity. Now, if you say that instead of that, we shall have a monarchy with one community alone being superior in all kinds, then you have a constitution. You may have used the amending power of the previous constitution, but you have created a new thing altogether. There is no flavor of the old constitution.
Okay.
Then what have you done? You have destroyed a constitution which you can't. That is why you say that is why the doctrine of basic structure, that certain things in the constitution are so sacrosanct that you will not change it. Not this parliament, not the next parliament or the one after that.
Deshratan Nigam, is it not true that several co-judgments in the Keshavananda Bharti case were not completely concurring? In other words, that they may have favored the majority verdict, the 7 who voted in favor of basic structure, but they weren't entirely concurring with what, for example, Justice S.M. Sikri had argued. And therefore, as I understand it and in my own reading, it's the use of the words basic structure in all of the judgments which backed basic structure, just the mention of the words which they put them on the majoritarian
Vishnu,
side.
Can I be heard on this?
So,
can I be heard on this?
Question is to me. You'll have your chance.
No, I just want one line.
Sure, go ahead with one line and Deshratan after that.
The one line is this, that 9 of the judges at the end of all these conflicting judgments signed a common order saying that these are the conclusions. And that's how basic structure comes in.
Deshratan Nigam, go ahead.
Let me answer that. The crux of my argument is that the parliamentary democracy and autonomy cannot be diluted under any circumstances. And the star of this country are the people of this country. And let me tell you, India was existing before the constitution and will exist even after the constitution. Constitution is just about 1950 onwards. To say that it cannot be changed, we have seen constitution in the world being changed, simply dumped, and new constitutions have come and taking care of the existing circumstances, and that the international precedents are already there, which says that the constitution, you can have a new constitution because it reflects the will of the people, and will of the people is we the people is are the ones who are alive and kicking today, not the ones who are dead and gone, who gave us a constitution. We respect them, no doubt about it. They gave a wonderful constitution. It's still working. But we, the people, are the generations of today who are alive. To say that we are irrelevant and we cannot, do anything with the constitution is freezing India, freezing the will of the people despite changed circumstances. And those changed circumstances have to be taken into account. And let me tell you, the concepts that are being brought in, like constitutional morality, as I said, varies from person to person, country to country, society to society. Morality varies. And the entire Indian jurisprudence is based on spirituality. Anybody can read the subjects on it, which is clearly there. You go for the search of truth and disassociate yourself from the matter and then deliver the judgment. Is this happening in this country? No. So once you, and there is a book by the Supreme Court itself published, and if you read it, and Supreme Court judges seems to be ignoring that book, and once you read it, you will see the concept of spirituality is based on truth and seeking the truth, finding out the truth. Has our legal system been able to do that? No.
Okay,
and concepts like morality.
You keep speaking about constitutional spirituality. Mr. Hegde, would you like to respond to that?
That's a nebulous concept, not there in any judgment of the Supreme Court. Okay. So Mr. Nigam has brought it out for this debate. Otherwise, I don't find anything. And the book that he refers to, well, I was one of the editors of that book. Be that as it may. The thing is that as we hold the Constitution not only as a gift from the past, but in trust for the future. It cannot be that the will of the people can be transformed into Ein Reich, Ein Volk, Ein Führer, or one man, one leader. The leader of the moment, whether it be Mrs. Gandhi in the 60s and 70s, or whether it be the current leader, they can come, they can go, they can rule. But they take oath according to the Constitution. They have to rule according to the Constitution. They might require amendments in the Constitution for certain programs of theirs. But they cannot own the Constitution, totally abrogate it, and declare themselves emperors.
Okay, fair enough. I think that is certainly one large part of the concern, that we like our democracy the way it is. There are those who believe that perhaps every aspect of it can be questioned when the time is right through a parliamentary amendment. We leave it over there, out of time, on Left, Right and Centre. From all of us here, good night.